Hey, it's really late and I'm really tired, but I've got to get this taped tonight because I'm helping out with VBS and I won't have time to do it early tomorrow. Usually I do it on Mondays, like earlier in the day, so I have time for editing and stuff, but I don't think I'm going to have much time just because it's busy. Today's topic, this week's topic, is to add a chapter to any book in the Twilight Saga. I actually chose something that I had written a while back, and it's actually meant to go before the conclusion of Eclipse, or perhaps as an alternate ending. It's called A Day in La Push, so I have it written down, so I'm going to be looking down a lot, so yeah. The engines of my old red truck roared to life as I turned the key in the ignition. I waved goodbye to Charlie, who was standing on the front porch, with an expression that showed that he was happy that I was visiting Jacob in La Push today. As I edged out of the driveway, I caught a glimpse of a shiny silver Volvo in my rearview mirror. Ugh, I thought. Edward. He must be following me to the border of the Quileute territory. I've never known how to pronounce that. Anyways, I ignored this familiar sight and kept going. After 10 minutes, I stopped at the border, and Edward did the same. By the time my truck was off, he was already at my door. Without a word, Edward pulled the door handle, and I slid out. "Edward," I said as he slammed the door shut. "Bella," he replied. "Alice saw you talking to Charlie about visiting Jacob this morning. I wanted to make sure you got there safely." He paused. "To the border, I meant." "Oh," I said softly. I didn't know what to say. I felt guilty about not seeing Jacob enough, but considering he and Edward were enemies by nature, ... Is that okay?" Edward interrupted my train of thought. Yeah," I answered. "Just warn me next time, okay?" With a simple nod, he leaned forward to kiss me goodbye, and we parted. I continued on to Jacob's house. Jacob must have heard the truck, because when I arrived, he was on the porch waiting for me. "Bella," he nearly shouted as I got out of the truck. He pulled me into a tight hug and spun me around. "I was wondering when you would visit again." He let me go, and I laughed. That used to really annoy me because I couldn't breathe, but it didn't bother me anymore. Whether it was the realization that I loved him or some other reason, I didn't know, but I was just glad that I was no longer annoyed by that. "What do you want to do today?" he asked excitedly. We could go to the beach," I suggested. "The beach it is, then," he replied. We took his rabbit and parked it in our usual spot. Jacob got out and came around to open my door for me, but I had already opened it. He did, however, shut it for me. We walked in silence for what seemed like ages, and then Jacob stopped. It took me a minute to figure it out, but I finally realized that he was leaning against a driftwood tree. Our driftwood tree. I sat down on a log and looked up at him. The sun made a halo around his head. Besides vampires in the sun, I thought, this was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. "Oh, Bella," he finally broke the silence, "why are you marrying him?" "Because," I whispered, "he already had me for all eternity. It's what he wanted." I regretted the words as soon as they left my mouth. He looked devastated. "Jacob," I continued, "I do love you, but what happens when you imprint on someone else? What happens to me then?" He stared at me in silence and finally muttered, "I don't know." I stood up and took a slow step towards him. He stepped forward as well. I pushed my head into his warm hand as he stroked my cheek and looked up into his beautifully deep eyes. I saw the sorrow in them, as he probably saw the sorrow in mine. We really did love each other, but I loved Edward more, and we both knew that too. "Jacob," I mumbled, caught up in the moment, "I should go." "Stay," he protested. "Please, Bella, just stay." "I can't," I mouthed. My eyes were becoming wet with sorrow. He gave a small nod and took my hand. We walked once again, slowly down the beach. As slow as we walked, the strip of beach never seemed so short. We walked straight past his rabbit and all the way back to my truck. The end. So, yeah. I really am tired. I'm so tired. I'm so sorry. I've had a lot going on lately, but yeah, so that's my additional chapter in a book, and yes, I know it's much, much shorter than the other chapters in Stephanie Meyer's books, but I wrote it a while back. I didn't want to write another one. So, yeah, bye.